There were 10 days every month when you didn't step past the yard. Not, it's better not to. Not, be careful. You don't go outside. That rule in our family was as solid as the concrete in the foundation. 10 days out of 30, we lived as if the world ended at our fence. No exceptions, no negotiations. As a kid, I couldn't tell those days from the usual ones. The sun still rose, the sky still looked peaceful. Neighbors' roofs still glittered the same way, but the adults always knew. They'd exchange a quick look in the kitchen in the morning, glance toward the ravine behind the last row of houses, the place they called the cut, and you could feel it. Oh, it's one of those days. On those days, my dad and Grandpa dragged out the folding table and set up under the big cherry tree. Chess, checkers, cards, old TV concerts humming in the background. Mom and Grandma cooked especially good food: roasted meat, baked potatoes, cherry pies, and we carried plates and cups out into the yard. It looked almost like a small family holiday every time. Only if you looked a little closer, it wasn't. Mom and Grandma moved around with stretched smiles and cheeks gone too pale. They talked louder than usual about good things, funny things, but their eyes kept flicking toward the gate. Dad and Grandpa joked, but the jokes landed wrong, thin and flat, like someone had turned the volume down on joy. Going into town those days was allowed only by car. Walking was out of the question. When Dad and Grandpa had to drive somewhere, they prepared like it was a funeral. Long, silent, grim. Checking locks, checking the sky, checking each other. I begged to come along once. "No," Dad said, not looking at me. "You don't need to see things." He didn't explain. No one ever did. I found out what things meant slowly. I was 10 the first time I got close to the fence on one of those days. I knew it was a no-going-out day. I heard them whisper about the ravine, the cut, the strip of black trees that started right behind our street. I knew the rule, yard only. But my ball didn't care about rules. I was kicking it around near the cherry tree when it took a bad bounce, rolled across the patchy grass, bumped the flower beds, and kept going straight toward the gate. I ran after it, all the way to the fence, heart beating a little faster, not from fear, but from the thought that I was almost breaking the rule. I stopped just shy of the wooden slats, bent down, grabbed the ball, and saw her. Right beyond the gate, maybe 2 feet away, stood a girl in a tied-under-the-chin bonnet. She was my height or a little shorter. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She just stared at me from under her brows. Hatred. Not childish anger, not sulking, real, cold hatred. So deep it didn't fit on that small face. I froze with the ball hugged to my chest. The longer I looked, the more wrong her face became. Her features slid out of place, just a little at first. Eyes too far apart, jaw too narrow. But once I noticed, I couldn't unsee it. Her skin seemed too tight in some places, too loose in others. Her eyes were the wrong age. They weren't a little girl's eyes at all. They were old. Very, very old. The thought came to me suddenly, like someone whispered it right into my ear. That's not a girl. That's a tiny old woman wearing a girl's face. "Sasha, what is it?" Mom's voice cut through from the window. I tore myself away from the gate and sprinted to the house, clutching the ball. As I ran, I saw Mom at the window, staring past me, not at me, at the gate, hard and tense. In the bedroom, I threw my arms around her waist. "There was some weird old lady," I babbled. "She was peeking into the yard." "What are you talking about?" Mom said softly. "You imagined it." She kissed my hair and stroked my back, but her heart hammered against my cheek like it was trying to punch its way out of her chest. And I remembered that look toward the gate. She'd seen her. We never spoke about it again. After that, the fence and the gate became a no-go zone for me. Not because of Dad's belt, but because I finally believed them. Something was out there. Every month, 10 days in a row, we lived in yard mode. 2/3 of the month we went to school, played on the streets, fished at the river, walked in the woods, biked to the store. The remaining third we turned into small prisoners with cherry shade and home-cooked meals. We stayed away from the fence line. No one picked apples or pears from the trees growing too close to the street. The roses and grapevines near the gate were trimmed only after the bad days were over. Those with cars could still drive out, as long as they went straight from garage to road and back. According to the grown-ups, whatever walked outside those days couldn't get into the car. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was something they told each other so they wouldn't go insane. Once I asked to go along for a ride. "No," Grandpa said, brushing me off. "You'll see things and won't sleep after." What things? I wanted to ask. But by then, I'd already seen enough to guess. I was 14 the first time something crossed the invisible line. Up until then, on the bad days, Mom and Grandma still worked in the vegetable garden that stretched beyond the cherry tree, all the way to the back fence. They kept one eye on the house and one on the ravine, but they worked. After that evening, they never did again. We were eating dinner outside, still pretending everything was fine, when I heard a strange sound behind me. Wet, convulsive, like a cat trying to cough up something too big to pass. Everyone at the table fell silent at the same time. The air felt suddenly pressed down, as if someone had placed a giant hand over the yard. I turned around. Across the rows of strawberries, between the tomatoes and the beans, an old woman lurched along our garden beds. She was doubled over, trembling as though fighting off violent wretches. She walked, shuddered, took another step, shuddered again. Then she stopped, braced her hands on her bony knees, and vomited. Her guts, not blood, not bile, intestines. A wet, glistening coil slithered out of her and dropped right onto our strawberries. She heaved again, and more came out, like someone pulling long ropes from inside her. Feet of it, yards of it. Then, calmly, almost lazily, the woman lifted her skirt, squatted over another row, and let more of herself spill out. When she was done, she stood, shook herself once, adjusted her clothes, like someone finishing normal business, and shuffled away across our garden, leaving her insides draped over the berry bushes like obscene decorations. No one said a word. No one jumped up. No one screamed. They all just stared, white-knuckled around their forks. And then, like good, emotionally stable people, we finished dinner. We never told the neighbors. We never discussed it in the family. We behaved as if it were embarrassing, like a drunk relative at a wedding. The next morning, the strawberries were clean. No blood, no guts, just earth and leaves. But that was the last time anyone stepped into the garden on those 10 days. That summer, things escalated. One evening, we stayed in the yard until it got properly dark, darker than we usually allowed ourselves on bad days. The air became heavy and thick, and the night pressed against the wooden fence like something alive. Then came the knocking. Sharp, fast bangs on the gate, like someone was hitting it with their fists, laughing. We all turned at once. Behind the slats, between the gaps, I could see them, several pale faces, all too low to be adult, all too small to be kids. Their heads barely reached halfway up the fence, but their eyes were at my eye level. One of them had its head jammed into a crack between the boards. It grinned, stretching its lips too wide. Its teeth were tiny and crowded, stacked over one another in rows. "Just don't look at them. They can't come in unless we open," Mom said calmly, as if describing the weather. Everyone turned their backs on the gate and went back to talking. They talked louder now, forcing laughter.
I tried to copy them, to ignore what banged and scraped and giggled at our fence. But now and then I glanced over my shoulder. The faces were still there, crammed together, pressing and squirming, fingers hooked into the wood, smiles carved on. The head in the crack hadn't moved, only the eyes followed me. They stayed like that far longer than any normal human would. When I finally went to bed, I lay awake for a long time, listening for the knocks that wouldn't stop. The idea that you were safe inside a car was comforting. It wasn't necessarily true. One of those months we had to drive into the city urgently. Strange or not outside, life went on, and paperwork waited for no ghost. We drove, Grandpa at the wheel, Dad in the passenger seat, me in the back, watching the fields and houses slide by. As we turned onto our street on the way home, I saw someone walking in our yard. A boy.
He crossed the yard slowly, passed through the open gate, and stepped into the street, walking backward. Our car rolled toward him. He rolled toward us, still back first, his head turned toward our house, like he was walking away from it but staring at it with deep, calm interest. We stopped. The boy passed within a meter of my window. It was me. My own face, my own hair, my own stupid t-shirt, except I didn't own that t-shirt. His smile was huge, unnatural, cheeks pulled too tight. His eyes slid over the car like he couldn't quite see it, but I felt them hook into me anyway. I twisted in my seat, watching him go. He moved down the street, still walking backward. The farther he went, the more wrong his body looked, joints bending in places where there were no joints, shoulders ticking at a weird rhythm. The gate in our fence sagged slightly from the wind. When we finally parked and got out, it was closed, from the inside. "Did you see that?" I whispered. "See what?" Grandpa said. "Dad just locked the car." That night I dreamed of myself walking backward through other people's yards, staring into their windows. The creatures outside loved the gate. They loved the line between in and out. Sometimes they tried the old-fashioned way, knocking, scratching, leaning on the boards. Sometimes they got creative. We had a landline phone in the hallway. On bad days, it rang more often. Once, when I was home alone, I picked up. "Hey Sasha, let's go play," said my friend Vlad. He lived next door. We were the same age, always knocking on each other's gates once the 10 days passed. "We're not supposed to go out now," I said. "Nobody's out here," Vlad said. "I've been walking around all day, didn't see a soul. Come on. Or let me at least come to you, we'll watch TV. I'm already on my way, just open the gate." I put down the receiver and went to the door. Sure enough, Vlad was standing behind the gate. Something about how fast he'd gotten there from the phone bothered me. Something about how he stood there, too still, arms dangling, head tilted. "What's taking so long?" he shouted. "Just come in, what are you waiting for?" I called back. "Gate's not locked." "Open it!" he yelled, suddenly furious. "Your stupid latch is stuck, are you deaf? Open the gate!" We didn't have a latch. Our gate never had one. It closed with a simple push. I turned around and went back inside without another word. Later he, or something wearing his voice, called again. Sometimes it was Vlad, sometimes Yaroslav, sometimes me calling them to come outside. My real friends later told me they got the same calls from me. Same lines, same tone. They'd always fail the same test. "Just open the gate for me." They never could. Most of the stories I remember happened in warm months, or maybe the summer ones just burned deeper into my memory. There was one winter, though. We were having breakfast in the kitchen. The windows were fogged around the edges, the glass cold to the touch. Snow piled up against the steps outside. We heard someone shuffling in the yard, slow, dragging steps, followed by a rough, wet cough. "Someone's here," Mom said and went to the window. She pulled back the curtain and instantly dropped it again.
Her face went gray, like all the blood had drained out at once. "I forgot to close the gate," Dad whispered, in that voice adults use when they're already blaming themselves. They didn't tell me what they saw. They just moved. In seconds, everyone in the house was slamming curtains shut, dragging them across windows, turning locks on doors, checking them twice. After that, we put the TV on full volume and sat there all day, watching idiotic shows while something large and heavy walked around our house. It coughed under the windows. It hit the door. It scraped along the walls. Our house stood on a high foundation. The windows were too high for any normal human to reach. The knocks still came from just under the glass. We didn't open, not once. By morning, it had gone. The snow in the yard was untouched.
There was one rule that didn't depend on the 10 days. The gate stayed closed. Always. Especially then. One afternoon, our neighbor called the house. "Sasha, is your gate open?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "Why?" "Because your mom is walking around your yard, and we're drinking tea together here at my place," the neighbor said. I went to the window. In the yard, my mother walked slowly back and forth in a dirty, oversized sweater I'd never seen before. It hung off her shoulders, stained with something dark. Sometimes she bent down and clawed at the dirt with her hands, digging like she was searching for something buried. The phone against my ear crackled. "Sweetheart," Mom's real voice said from the neighbor's kitchen, "just lock all the doors and don't open if she knocks. She'll leave on her own." Outside, the thing that looked like Mom straightened up and looked directly at my window. Her head twitched sharply to the side, like something inside her skull was pushing to get out. I went and locked every door twice. Beyond our street lay the cut, a ravine overgrown with black trees and thickets. It began right behind the last backyard and ran for miles, a scar across the landscape. Everything came from there. The fires, the smoke, the things that knocked. The not people that wore familiar faces with wrong shadows. Sometimes I saw smoke rising from the cut, thick, black, clotted. Sometimes I saw actual flames, trees falling, sparks drifting into the sky. Every time I ran to Mom, "The ravine is burning!" She always checked, always looked, and always said the same thing. "There's no fire, Sasha. It's starting again. Close the gate." Older folks told a story about a summer back when the old days were still the old days, when city people drove an old black SUV into the ravine for a picnic. They drank, tossed cigarettes, blasted music. The fire that started that day ate the woods, animals, and several people. The grove grew back. The people didn't. The car never left. Sometimes on the bad 10 days, I saw that same black SUV gliding along the ravine or creeping down our street. The driver's seat was always empty. The worst came years later, when the strange things had calmed down and adults had almost convinced themselves it was over. We were older. We walked freely. Some of us even went into the cut to prove nothing lived there. And then one day, the black SUV came back for real. It emerged from the tree line with no sound, gliding instead of driving, and rushed down the street toward a group of kids near the ditch. Two small boys didn't have time to run. The SUV hit them. No screech, no skid, no honk. It hit them and passed right through, dissolving along with them in the same instant, like a film reel burning up mid-frame. By the time adults reached the spot, nothing was there. No bodies, no blood, not even tire marks. Just two shallow impressions in the grass, as if someone had lain there a moment and quietly stood back up. That was the last drop. Before that, people tolerated the weirdness. They closed their gates, turned up their TVs, pretended it was just how things were here. But dead children, or whatever counts as dead when a car with no driver consumes them, was too much.
Mom had just had my baby brother. After the SUV took the boys, she and Dad stopped saying, "Maybe later." They started saying, "We're leaving." It still took years. And during those years, the boys who'd been taken walked the streets during the 10 days. They stopped under our windows and called softly to my baby brother, "Come play with us." We moved to the city when I was 17, partly because I got into university, a miracle of grades and quotas, and they gave me a room in a dorm, partly because Dad finally found work there, mostly because Mom refused to raise her second child in a place where the dead had visiting hours. Grandpa didn't make it, or as Grandma likes to say, didn't fully make it. He died before we moved. Age, heart, all the usual reasons. We buried him in the small cemetery near the cut. Grandma stayed behind a little longer, waiting for paperwork, then joined us in the city. She says she doesn't feel particularly lonely without him. When she looks out the window of our apartment, sometimes she sees him walking across the courtyard, hands behind his back. Sometimes she sees him lying on a bench under the building, arm thrown over his face against the sun, napping. And she says it with the same calm tone my mother used whenever something knocked on our door. "You see, he still comes by. What's there to be lonely about?" As for me, I sleep well. Most nights.
But 10 days each month. Doesn't matter the city, the job, the year. I still check the curtains twice. I still lock the door. I still hear a car engine at night and think of that black SUV gliding through streets that don't remember it. And every now and then, I feel that someone is standing on the other side of my door, not knocking, not calling, just waiting for me to forget and open.